Could you briefly introduce yourself and share what brought you to work at the crossroads of CBRN, cybersecurity, or critical infrastructure protection?
My name is Spence. I have been working in the non-proliferation space for over 20 years, starting at OPCW, Interpol, for a small NGO in London, on legislative implementation of non-proliferation treaties. And then I was the one of the experts to the Security Council's 1540 committee. So for many, many years, I've been working across CBRN, chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear material management. In terms of critical infrastructure, it's always, of course, been an issue that I've been interested in, but I've always been more focused on how do we manage the materials. Of course, the facilities, but also the materials that are located within them. What's interesting about the project that I'm now involved with as deputy team leader, but also as the legislative expert, is how can we address not just the material, but the infrastructure itself, but the infrastructure that, if it were impacted, or if there was an incident that involving the facility, how would that impact the environment, the economy, national security, and so on. And then adding the cybersecurity angle makes the project even more interesting and complex. And of course, we all know now that with the advent of artificial intelligence and other technologies, that's making the management of critical infrastructure, the materials within, even more challenging.
In your view, why is your field, whether CBRN, cybersecurity, or critical infrastructure protection, so crucial today for regional stability and global security?
So the protection of these materials, the non-proliferation of these materials, has always been important because there have been people, bad actors, who want to get their hands on these materials. We've known this for over 20 years. The concern has always been non-state actors, terrorists, who have wanted to misuse these materials for their own purposes. What's interesting again about this project is we are looking at hostile acts against using these materials, but also against the facilities themselves, turning these facilities, if you will, into weapons themselves. At the same time, we're aware that for many countries, though that is a priority, they are also concerned about a natural event that might have a negative impact on these facilities. And when I say these facilities, I'm talking about laboratories, whether they're high containment laboratories or laboratories that are doing basic research. I'm talking about chemical production plants, chemical storage sites, but also we're talking about radioactive waste facilities, and in some cases, nuclear power plants. So they're concerned about not just the hostile acts, but a natural incident that might have a negative impact on those facilities.
Looking ahead, what emerging risks or opportunities do you believe will most profoundly transform your field in the coming years?
I think that the digitalization of everything, and of course we've seen examples at this conference of the digitalization of the planet and how we can actually use that to our benefit. But I think that it poses challenges, but it also poses opportunities. In my view, artificial intelligence is of course going to be front, right, and center of our work. It's a dual use tool, if you will. You can use it for really good purposes. We can use it to help us identify critical infrastructure, how to better protect it. But at the same time, it can be used by bad actors to help them facilitate activities that in the past would have been a bit more difficult, and now they can use artificial intelligence to help them carry out these activities a bit more effectively, unfortunately. So there are, again, risks, but also opportunities in these new technologies. Also the digital platforming that we've been seeing for how to model flooding that would have an impact on critical infrastructure sites, very interesting. It's still in early stages, some of this work that we're doing, but we're very excited to see how we can employ this in this project to better benefit the project countries.
How do initiatives like the EU CBRN Centre of Excellence Project 101 help strengthen cooperation and capabilities in your field?
Well, I've been involved with the COE now for 15 years, and I think one thing that has always been important to me about the COE is how it brings different ministries and agencies within governments together. It facilitates their cooperation, because without interagency, interministerial cooperation, it's so much more difficult to manage the things that we're asking them to do, whether it's biological waste management, chemical waste management, radioactive source management, but also addressing climate change risks and what that poses to the management of these materials and these facilities. But I think it's that cross-sectoral cooperation. It's also cooperation between academics, government, between countries, between regions. Actually, this project is so interesting because it crosses 3 regions. So I think the COE helps bring together different stakeholders, different government actors, different countries, different regions to promote that cooperation. And I think to a large extent, it's been very successful.
You have a unique perspective shaped by years of experience. What would you like to tell young people who aspire to work in science, technology, and security, and who will inherit both the risks and the opportunities you are facing today?
So I always enjoy being asked by young people this very question. The first thing I say is learn languages. It's super important. I also think young people should be always training themselves, being open to learning more about the field that they're in, because especially in our field, it's changing so dramatically. I can speak from personal experience with this project, learning more about digital twinning, satellite-based imaging, and how we can apply that to critical infrastructure assessment and protection. So even now, there are learning opportunities, and I think this is particularly true for younger people who are building their careers. And I think the risk now is that the technology is changing very quickly. And with, again, the advent of artificial intelligence, the advent of the digitalization of everything, the Internet of Things, and other advancing technologies, this is particularly true in the biological space, to be just aware of the opportunities posed by these emerging technologies, but also to be aware of their risks. And the opportunities lie in how do we address those risks. So it's actually a very exciting time to be a young person working on these issues. But again, learn those languages, network. For this event, we had a kind of app that would allow us to network with other people, but I'm always a fan of also the old-fashioned at coffee, talk to people, and talk about what they're up to. What technologies are they working on? And think about how they can integrate them into their own work. Thank you.